Hi, I'm Willy Bearden. Welcome to Dialogue. Today, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to a man. If you've never met him, if you don't know him, you've certainly heard his name. You can't really tell the story of Memphis in the last half of the
Hi, I'm
20th
Willy Bearden.
century
Welcome to Dialogue.
and the first few years
today,
of this century.
It is
without
my
knowing
great pleasure
Henry Turley.
to be talking to
Henry
a man
has
who
done
has
so much for
had
our
so
city
much to
and
do
is
with how our
just
city,
a great guy, and so
and
I'm
our
really
county, and
excited
really our
today to be able
society
to learn a
has
little
been
more about
formed
Henry
over the
and what
last
he's done
50
and what he's
years,
doing right
really.
now. Henry, welcome,
you
and thanks
know
for
his
being on the
name,
show.
Well,
but you
thank
probably
and
don't
thanks for that,
know as much as
introduction.
you're going
I
to
think I'll
know.
be hard to live
His
with.
name is Bill
Well, that's all
Morris.
right. You can
Knowing
Mr.
but
Mayor,
not
thank you
believing.
so
Yeah,
all
there
right
you
about
go. Well,
myself.
Here. This
you can
is-
ride
it's
on
always
that for
been
a while.
a goal of mine to get you
Henry, you
on
you
TV
are a
and for us to
Memphian.
have kind of a wide
You
range
are a
Born in
Memphian.
Memphis, yeah.
conversation.
Yes.
So thank you so much for doing
Yes,
this. My
when?
pleasure. Thank you. Well, let's jump right in.
I want to change my
I want you
driver's
to
license.
let's talk about what Northeast
1940 was a
Mississippi
good year.
was like
So
in
you
the
came up
1930s
during the
when
time
you
you
were coming
came up
up.
during World War II
I have
years,
to tell you,
and
not
then,
just Northeast Mississippi,
you know, through the 50s
almost the
and everything.
entire
What
South.
was Memphis like
It
when
was
you were
during the
growing
Depression.
up? Where did you live and
And,
that sort of thing?
Places like Itawamba
Memphis
County, where I grew up, North Mississippi, right on the Alabama line. There's only a couple of ways you can make money.
It's
You
a huge.
Maybe grow some cattle a little bit, but mainly you would work in cotton fields,
There's so much more
growing
wealth
crops.
than there was
then
at the time.
As
We
the
were-
30s started, which was only a few
middle
years
class,
after it was
but
discovered that there was availability for a market for timber. And then,
them at the corner.
That was on
Really?
donors'
Yeah.
jobs.
Wow.
WPA,
Yeah, I mean, we
there was
didn't
no
have a Coke. I mean, we were
housing,
thinking about
almost
spending that
non-existent,
kind of
except the
money.
Right.
sharecroppers'
So
houses.
your
and
parents
that
had
time.
come up
Few
during
small
the Depression.
Yeah,
and
so
houses
we were
around
trained to be poor.
the county
Yeah.
court.
And
houses.
hell, we
But
was
anyway,
clear to
there was a
us then
very
that we had
small
lost the
percentage
Civil
of
War.
people
Yes,
had
right. So
that
this
was
all
a
this
business
was
center,
still
like
kind
a
of
grocery store
present
or what have you, or ran
and,
the gin,
and
or the
you could
ice house,
kind of still touch
or
on that
ran,
history.
what's called
I guess.
cafes,
You know, a
hamburger
lot of
joints,
people.
or whatever. But everybody else, like
Wow.
my family,
Wow.
you
And of
hope
course
to get a
the
job at the lumber
Depression
yard. You hope to be able
right there.
to sharecrop.
Yes.
You hope
So
to be able to
what
work
was
in a
it,
shirt factory and building,
Did you
where they were growing,
obviously
making blue
you
jeans
went
and
downtown
overalls
a
and
lot
that kind of
when
thing.
you were a kid? What are
And
your
then
memories of
people
downtown
had jobs in the
Memphis
stores
when you were,
and what have you.
you know,
but there was
a,
no money.
a kid and then a
And
teenager?
people
Well,
like
of
my
course, we'd
father
catch the bus on tomorrow. I didn't answer
had a
where
small
we
40-acre
lived.
farm
We
at one
lived
time,
more or
just
less
about the
at
time I was
Bellevue
born,
Lamar.
1932.
Okay.
And
So
he had to
we
borrow
could
the
catch
money,
the
of
Lamar
course,
bus and go in
to
fast
make the crop.
and,
Right.
for
The crop
long,
came
we were
in,
fun
and there was no market.
or we were
And there was no
coach
money.
friends, or we were
Of course, we
certainly
grew
in
some
the thick of
food and that kind of thing.
Right.
But
our first
so
job was,
the farm went to the banker.
50.
and there was no recourse. I mean, you pay,
Oh, really?
or you
Where
leave.
was that downtown?
and that was the
Julius
case for
Lewis
many
is where
hundreds
the,
and maybe thousands of small farms throughout the South.
Majestic is.
Oh,
Elvis Presley, for
okay.
example, his
Yeah.
father,
Of course, was
his
movie
mother,
and
father,
now-
before he was
now
born,
it's a
and I was
splendid
born
restaurant.
about
Yes,
the
it
same
is.
time. That
Well
he was born
run
in
and
35, and I was born in 32.
Yes.
Well, that's where I worked.
Had a little farm
Wow.
right next
Never
to
go in
where
there
my
that I
down the
don't
street from where
find
road where
someone.
my mother and father.
I worked
But he
right
got
up
in
there,
trouble trying to
selling
make a transaction,
pens
honest transaction,
to
but
very
it
large
turned out his deal
Really?
fell through, and because of a $100
other
bad check, he went to
folks.
prison.
Wow, that is
No
something.
recourse. That could never happen today.
When were you
But
aware
then
of,
it was tough
downtown
times.
beginning to kind of
everything we
erode
had
as a magnet
was
for
either
people?
on credit
You know,
or
back then, did you see that start
had a
to
job.
happening?
didn't have a job, you couldn't
sure.
get credit.
I lived right
and
through that.
and the clothes that you wore were
I
very
went to
minimal.
the real
You got a
estate
pair of shoes a
business
year,
in
and
63.
Okay.
sometimes those
Worked for a
clothes were
company
torn
called
and kind
Percy
of tattered by the
Galbraith
time
and Son.
Right.
you
General
went to
Real Estate
the end of the
Company.
school
So I
year.
was right there.
But
What was
it
up?
was, it was
Right.
were tough times.
And
It's
the
hard to
reason I
explain. Nobody
formed
can really believe
my
that there was no
company
welfare
in
system. There were no doctors,
77
clinics in the
because
entire
I
county.
wanted to set out
But
on
you did
this-
have one newspaper, the
this,
Itawamba County Times,
rather
where you had
seemingly
editors of that paper and people who read that paper who provided a very good window of the happenings in the community, which was what really attracted me to it, was to get a job first, but secondly, what I saw those people doing, they were trying to make people feel proud that they lived there and try to encourage them.
So we started.
The congressman from that district, from Rankin, every election, every 2 years, he would come to Fulton, and he would have one thing on his mind: to convince people that they were going to have the Tongue-Bay Big River widened.
Really?
And they
So
were going to be
I
able
ended
to
up,
ship
since
the
I didn't
timber
have any
and
to
cotton
sell,
and all the crops down the river, Mobile, Alabama, down there. And, you know,
how hard to sell
take
was
another
that?
before-
real estate company
more
down
before it
that
started
route.
happening.
Yeah.
But
It's
that
hard as
county
ridiculous.
was
Yeah.
much different than many others.
spent,
Coal
I
miners
spent,
were
a long time,
getting the coal. You go
putting
like 50
together
miles
the
away,
debt
but
money
there was no
for our
coal in
first
Memphis County.
downtown residential
But so you had
project,
coal,
which was
you had
converting
timber,
the then
you had
empty
crops,
shrine building,
and you had a little growing of
previously an office building,
hogs and
Shriners
cows.
headquarters.
Oh, it
Mute
was the
trading
Shriners
horses and
headquarters.
mules, that type of thing. But that was just about it, you know. And you worked, and there were no factories except for clothing manufacturing, and you made so little. Oh, you could be a school bus driver, and then there was nothing that else to do all day long.
Sure.
So sometimes the husband would drive the school bus and the wife would
Yeah,
work in the
those are
shirt factory.
beautiful.
But it was hard
those
as the
kind of things.
Dickens
Do you think that
borrow money,
that
not
informed
quite so hard to raise
how you later looked at big
What was
municipal problems?
when you would
and-
go to people and
and
say, "I think people need to be
challenges?
living downtown
what
again"?
it
What
formed was a
what
total
reaction would you
commitment
get
for
from people?
humanity.
Always, well, I would have to go to
And
the
that could take
bank
on
or
many
say,
different forms.
I
One,
always thought that
there's so many
they
people
must
who are
have
doing
a back door
without
to their office.
and needed help.
Because when I arrived in
I was
the waiting
introduced to
area,
the welfare system
the
many
ones
years
that-
later, which I never
Really?
participated in.
well, they didn't want to
But
say
I was able
no.
to
I mean, they
shoot
were a
a
bunch of
job.
good
I had
guys,
strong
Yeah.
but they
ethics.
had to say no.
And
Yeah.
Think
I
about
did
it.
whatever
You
was
got
necessary to
your
work.
money
I worked for the
deposited
newspaper.
in a bank
I worked milking cows, and I worked in picking cotton. I worked in logging, getting logs out of the woods and bringing them to the lumber yard. I did everything that you can possibly think of. I had paper route in Mobile, Alabama, and worked at
So they had
Curb
a
Market
1%
when I was,
margin.
you know, in
Yeah.
the
They
sixth
didn't
grade.
want
Right.
to take
So anyway,
your money
that work ethic
Yeah.
and their
was an
tiny
energizer
margin
for me,
and
physically
gambling on
and
something that was
intellectually.
crazy.
Sure.
Well, that was,
I saw that
well,
if
I
you
wouldn't say
put enough
crazy,
into
no one
something,
ever
you get
thought
something
that,
back.
but was unproven.
And,
Exactly.
and I
Couldn't
did
really
also learn one
justify
other thing that's so terribly
I'm not
important.
sure if
You don't really need to
as a
take what you ain't
depositor
earned.
saw them
yeah.
money to a
And
then
there's so much
young
pride
guy
in
with
that.
an odd
And I
idea.
saw people
How
taking
unlikely I had
handouts
Sure,
that
that you would have
could
preferred.
work.
Right.
I
So,
never did
you know, real
have a lot
quick
of
to
respect for people
criticize
who had
bankers,
the opportunity,
I do
and it was
not.
easier for
Yeah.
them to take a
Yeah,
handout.
well, I
than to
But let me
stand
tell
up.
you what made
So
made my
that did have
personal
some
income
impact
through.
on
Okay.
civil
what I
rights, but
did and thought when I came to
Really?
Memphis after I got out of the Army.
They passed
And
or
was married by
encouraged
that
the
time,
passage of
going to
something
University of
called
Memphis,
the
Memphis State College.
Community Reinvestment Act.
That
Okay.
I
Which
worked through
basically
college.
required
There were no
that banks
options.
reinvest,
There were no, I didn't have any
not
student loan
simply in the
opportunities.
best parts
So
of
you
the
either
city,
worked,
Right.
but
paid your
throughout
tuition,
their
or didn't
banking
go.
footprint.
And so
And I
at
think
Memphis
with
State,
that
for
in
example, I
place,
became the business
banks
manager of the
said,
school paper.
"Who was that young
Okay.
fool
Tiger
that
Rag.
came by here with
And
that
they gave me the
backwoods
opportunity to go out on the street
Call it
and
up.
to sell advertising for that
So,
paper.
how did you feel
son
when
had
you
advertised
finally
that paid
got
me a
that
commission.
loan? Were you,
I
did you
took that
feel a little
commission,
bit
I
like
put it
the
on my-
dog
and
that's
paid
been
my
chasing the
tuition.
car for 10 years and finally catches one?
Well, I,
System really works. Sure,
I
yeah.
should
The
have.
harder you
Of
work,
course,
the more you
first I
do.
called my
Money's
civil
come in.
rights friends
And when you
thanked
get more
them
Yes.
that's coming in, and you're going to
Right.
spend.
and tease them about
That's
their
successful
50
business, right?
Yeah,
Think
right.
about it.
Sure.
There's been a little race in that.
Yeah.
Were you always looking for
all right, boy.
opportunity,
He was
though? I
pretty
mean, did you just
Sure.
kind of know,
Wow.
I got to keep
Wow.
pushing?
You know, it's the strangest thing.
Speaking of that, and
opportunities just kind of came.
when you grew
What
up
I
in
found
Memphis,
out later
Memphis
was
was
that most
obviously,
every
you know,
employer in town
very
was looking for somebody
segregated.
who
Really,
really
every
wanted to work,
aspect of our lives
and was capable of
were
doing
segregated
something.
here.
And I went to
How
work for
did
SC2
you?
Company,
How did
which
your
is
thinking
where,
evolve
as a printer
on that?
I thought I knew something, but
that was real
by the
slow.
time I come to
Yeah.
Memphis,
It really was. You know, it was
I took a
such
job
given.
there, and
think about it. You
They put
asked
me on
how
a
I
fast
got
track, and what they
downtown
found
Yeah.
by
on
having
the
me
bus.
tested, they thought I could do something
very
besides run a printing
clearly
press,
getting on
and
the
then
bus
and gave me up to the
calculating
cell. Taught me
white
cost accounting,
line
taught me how to
might
do the
be.
business side
Because you
through
sure
the
didn't
cost
wanna
accounting process.
embarrass yourself
And
by
it was the
having
greatest
to get
experience
up
you could possibly
and
have.
move
But like
forward
the Etowah
to
County Times, where I
accommodate
grew up, I had
a black
mentors
lady who may get on later.
Yeah,
had
right.
special
So
interest
you
in me.
really, I mean, we
Not
did
because I
some
was
of the
anybody,
dumbest stuff.
but because
Yeah.
I
How
was somebody
about this?
that was trying to
I
do that very.
graduated
I never went
from
home at 5
UT,
o'clock.
From UT,
I didn't take a
University of Tennessee,
break, and we didn't know
Knoxville.
about breaks.
And
We knew about
having
doing a job,
never
right,
gone
and
to
doing it
school with a
well,
black person.
and for
I'm
people who are
talking
working for it
about
to
and
appreciate it.
including
Sure.
And
the
that's always been the
basketball
case. I never found
Really?
that to be
I've done
different
exactly.
anywhere.
Really?
Whether I'm doing the printing, whether I'm working in
That's,
City of
you know, I
Memphis,
mean, it's just,
or
it's
whether I'm
hard
running
to
for
believe
It really is.
I
that,
found
that, you know, in
people
your
in the community
lifetime and everything
appreciated
you've done,
somebody
that
who
that
stood for
whole
something that they
part
could
of your
believe in.
life, from
And
kindergarten,
consequently being sheriff.
elementary school,
And
junior
I was
high,
good at being
everywhere.
sheriff
was-
because
Look out.
I watched
Yeah.
in that hometown of
And
Mississippi.
it took me
I watched abuse
well
of
into
people.
college to
I saw
kind
an abuse
wake up
of
and say,
minorities.
"This is
Uh,
really
I was a minority
Yeah.
in that
to
I was
say
on the poor
nothing
side
but
of
just.
everything.
Yeah.
Right.
And the black people in that community were on the poor
Unproductive.
side of everything.
Exactly.
Consequently, we
Exactly.
were treated
Yeah.
very
Wow.
similarly. And
So, you know, as you,
my family was not.
did
a part
you
of the
see a
society
lot of your
part. Obviously,
contemporaries
uneducated
start
and
changing
hardworking, people.
their
So by the
thinking
time
on race
I
at the
experienced
same
watching
time? I know
people in
probably
my
you
own
left a lot of
family
people
being
behind in that, and
Well, I
some,
think
law
generally
enforcement.
we were slow.
I never could
Yeah.
understand that.
We really
Why?
were slow.
Why is
Yeah.
it necessary to abuse it? So when I ran for sheriff,
I'm more.
I had, without having law enforcement experience, I talked about those things.
I went to
I talked about
Birmingham.
fairness, black or white. We didn't have the privilege of
63.
identifying which laws
Saw
go
the
for black and which go for white.
unpleasantness.
Oh,
Laws
really?
govern all of us.
Wow.
Right.
And we also learned
And-
through the Junior
and it
Chamber of
was
Commerce that
Only then
Government
that I
should
was
build
just
laws,
becoming aware
not
that
a
our
people.
system was
because
wrong.
people are different.
yes, right.
Laws stand
Oh,
pat.
wow.
Right.
And if you don't like them,
you know,
change
it's amazing.
them.
I'm a little
what's
younger,
good for
and,
one
and
person
so
is good for
I
everybody,
just,
as far as
you
the
know,
law is
it
concerned.
was
And
almost,
in law
you know, through
enforcement,
osmosis that I started changing.
it was
Just
a
from
tough
reading
task
things
changing the
and just
mindset of
hearing
people in
it,
law enforcement.
just
As a
hearing it out
31-year-old.
in the world. You know, people
No
saying
law
this is
enforcement.
wrong.
31
because
years
when I was a
old,
little
right.
kid, I
You
never
were
heard
sheriff.
anybody say it was wrong.
And
It's just the way it was.
These old
And
little
then
boy
as
guys
you
been
started
riding
hearing
lawn,
those,
you
and
know,
so
you can just imagine.
that
Sure.
leads me to
Tough
think
guys.
that
Yeah.
really
And they thought, well, here's this
all great
kid comes in here with
movements,
a towel and
somebody
they
has to
didn't
say it
have
out
any
loud
idea,
first,
where
right?
I came
And
from.
then people start
If
getting
they
used
had, they
to
probably
hearing
treated it
that,
differently, but
and then it
it took
softens
me
people up.
And repeated
not very
a whole
long
lot
to
of
get their
times
attention
in a whole lot
about
of different
what I
ways.
expected.
Right,
Right.
Oh, that's something.
And
Wow.
because it was what people
so-
expected.
Sure.
Honesty.
Your father was in
and
the
to
cotton
be
business.
treated fairly.
Did
And
you?
my
and
brother's
to
still.
expect
your
to
brother
live on the
still
salaries
is.
that
Who
they
is
were
my
paid.
good
Yeah.
friend Calvin is in the cotton
And you know what I
business,
found
and
the first day I went in
and
office?
as a
We had black
he
deputies
knows the
and
cotton
we had white
business
deputies.
like nobody's business. I'm
White
telling
deputies
you,
could arrest
he
people
knows that
of all
business
colors.
inside
Black
and
deputies
out.
could only arrest
And he
black
has
people.
kind of done everything in that.
So the
business.
Civil Rights Act passed that year.
I'm going to have
Had
Calvin
passed
on
that
here
year,
pretty
so
You'll
I
have a
read
good
the act.
show.
So I
Yes,
knew what
I
I was
will.
supposed to do, you know.
Yeah.
Did you?
It's just
Were
a
you
matter of
ever
treating everybody
tempted
equally,
to
men
go into the
and
cotton
women
business,
and
or did
blacks
you
and whites
work
and
with your
whomever,
father any,
but
or how much
everybody
did
that's
you
citizen,
hang around
you know,
front
should be
street?
treated
No, I
the
wanted
same.
to be a farmer.
I practiced that
it-
every
you
day of my
know,
life.
which
Really?
is, of course,
For the
related
in-office or
to
out
the
of
cotton
office.
business. Because,
What kind
you
of
know, we not
pushback
only
did you
were
get
poor,
from because I mean you got to admit these
racially
are pretty
divided.
progressive
we were
attitudes back then in
agricultural
1964,
based. I was
65.
quite
I mean,
ambitious to,
you know, would
find
people kind of
better
take you
ways
aside and
to
go,
farm
hey,
and
you know,
a
young
better way to
man,
run
you
our
know, do you know what you're
agriculture
doing?
Two things happened. You talk about pushback.
Yeah.
What I said,
in fact, the reason
I said in the presence of Dr. Paul Cottle,
I went on an
minister of First
ag
Baptist Church.
scholarship
When I
based
thought about running,
largely
he asked the
on
people
a
that were friends of mine
letter
in
I
the church,
wrote
we sat down, we
in
talked.
recommendation of
Why do you
myself.
want to run for sheriff?
Kidding,
I hadn't
really?
heard
think you can
anything that good about me
itemize all those
since
things.
your
And so
introduction.
finally,
That's great. That's
if you promise
amazing.
me,
So,
if
okay.
you
But I
do all
changed
those
my
things,
mind
I'll
once
do
I went
everything in my
up
power
there
Sure,
and
yeah.
ended
to
up
get
in
elected.
the real estate
But when you do,
business
Okay.
and feel lucky
I'm gonna hold you
for
accountable.
having
Yeah.
done so.
And
You know,
so
sometimes
I
you
took that
just
seriously.
kind of hit a groove.
And so
Right.
And I
I
think a
knew what
lot
I had
of
promised
it
by the time I
is,
didn't expect to get elected. I might tell you that. I was running
figure things out
to
at
make a
a
statement about what
subconscious
I was
level
against.
or
I was against the way the
less
sheriff's department was being run.
reasoned
I was against the
level. It's kind of
favoritism.
maybe you
I
know
was
where you
against the
fit,
good old
maybe
boy
you know a
network,
little more
where everybody's
than you
treated
thought
different.
you did.
There's all
Right,
those things
right.
added up
But
to
I've been lucky.
been
Yeah. So
a terrible thing
with
for
the
our
cotton
society.
business, did
So
you
I
know
ran,
about the
I
cotton
won,
business? I mean, y'all had a farm.
Sure.
And I
was
was
and-
trying
and
to
so-
say that, but
we raised
two
cotton
things
with
happened.
mules.
First
I
month,
remember the first
One,
tractor we bought.
we had a
And
deputy
we had to
that
think
murdered
about it
a
maybe
woman
5 or 10 years
out
for
in the
making
Raleigh
that
area.
extravagant a purchase.
And
so
so
they used our
we
challenge.
made that arrest, and it made some headlines
That is something.
and so forth. But
So
Yeah,
when
it
you
was the
came
second
when you
thing
came back to
was
Memphis
we had
after
arrested,
college, went to work for Percy Galbraith, and
car
what kind of
on Highland and
real
Poplar.
estate
and it was a
did
new
you start
Riviera
doing then? Did they
that the
do
guy was driving.
office space? Or
And he had
what-
loaded
They
his trunk
were
loaded in
Percy
moonshine
Gamble
liquor.
and Son was
And
a
it turns out the
large
car
real estate
belonged
services firm
to a
that
friend
did
of a
most
friend.
everything except
And they made a quick
Oh, okay.
appeal to me
I
to let him
did
go.
Property management. In
I
other
said,
words,
you know,
if your faucet
you don't think
leaked,
you don't mind throwing my
not
integrity
Really?
under the bus, do you?
Yeah, right.
So
If you
your
ask
phone
me to
was
let him
ringing
go,
off the
I said,
hook.
let me tell you what's
it
going to happen.
rang, and-
First of all,
but,
I'm gonna by
in
law, I'm
the
going to
end,
confiscate
it
that
gave
new
me a
Riviera, and he
good
will never
sense
get
of
it
how
again.
property
Two,
works
he's going to prison
physically and
because he's violated the law I'm
forced
expected to enforce.
Put
Now,
washers in the
I'd rather,
faucets. We
I
paid the
appreciate your
taxes
friendship.
and
This is what's going to
negotiated
happen.
the taxes
Okay.
with the insurance. And so you
And
saw
that
how
word
real
got
estate
around.
worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never
the top
fixed
line
and 3
and
terms
the
of sheriff, I
bottom
never
line
fixed
were
one
quite
ticket.
different.
Yes. Yeah.
So it gave
Everybody,
me a
because if they could have paid the
realistic
ticket,
view of
I'd
real
try to help
estate,
raise the money.
which
And I'd
I've
tell them.
appreciated
Sure,
over
yeah.
the
Basically,
bet.
they wanted me
I
to
bet.
give
Where
up
did
my
you
integrity
live at
for a
that time when
$20
you first
parking
started? So
ticket,
through the kind of
whatever.
through
Yeah,
the
right.
For them to
60s, were
have-
you still living in
they got plenty of
Midtown?
money.
Let me,
You know,
Yeah.
so
tell you
I
a
said,
little
why would you do
secret
that?
I don't
Yeah.
like to
So they
admit.
stopped calling on me to fix tickets.
My friend
And then,
Sam Daddle.
After all of that,
I believe
we had we put
1966,
black people and white people together in the
built a
same squad
building
car.
then called
okay.
And I selected
the
roughest, toughest,
Oh, yeah, still there.
redneck deputies we
Beautiful
had.
building.
Yeah.
I sat down and we said, we talked about it. Let's make some history.
Yeah.
Let's show that we can treat everybody the same. That's number one. Let's get to know each other. And getting to know each other. I mean, black people have kids, white people have kids. They don't know that they got all that difference. So get to know people. And within a month, we integrated those squad cars and they began to be, but for the first time, some of those deputies, black deputies, were going into areas of Memphis that they were not allowed to go previously.
Right.
That was embarrassing. How could they feel good about life? So one of those deputies is still around. His name is Bill Hughes, and he and Elizabeth, we became close, dear friends over 55 years ago, and still are. And he comes to my house, and we visit, we do things all together. But and he went up through the ranks and became the chief of the penal farm, and chief of the sheriff's department, and it just was great success because he was given an opportunity.
Right.
And so I think most people just want an opportunity.
Sure.
Sure. Equal opportunity.
Right, exactly. What are the things that people don't know about being sheriff? I mean, you kind of say sheriff, and it's like, okay, it's Matt Dillon. What are the things that you had to learn by being the sheriff?
Not much more than I had to learn to be a man.
Really?
Yeah.
And to be a good citizen. To be a friend to people you work with.
Right.
to be honest with people and to have one standard. And I had, just after I was elected, one of the deputies who had been put there through politics, I instructed to do a specific job. It's in the book I wrote. Not to embarrass anybody, but to make the point to all the departments. He said to me, after he was given instructions by me to do something, he said, you know, Sheriff, I'm going to have to think about that.
So I had all these arguments.
Well, what do you mean? He said, I think I need to go see Mr. Barrett. You know, everybody knows who Mr. Paul Barrett was. But he didn't know what Mr. Paul Barrett had become a friend of mine in the campaign through Mr. A. Plow. And he had really strong
I mean, I'm sure that down in South Main there were still like
what I said I would do
hotels, if you will, you know, that are just were kind of
he said, I need to talk to him.
transient
I tell you what you do. Why don't you this afternoon, Why don't you go ahead and talk to him this afternoon? That might give him enough time to have you a place to work tomorrow because you do not work here anymore.
Really?
And so that was a little bit of a bad break for him, but it was also a good break for me, given the opportunity to say, I'm running the sheriff's department, good, bad, or indifferent. I'll face the public when times come, but I'm not going to let the employees make a determination that they're going to run this department when it's my responsibility.
Right.
And so the next election, after 2 years, two things happened. At the end of the first year, I did what we call a report card. 750 people showed up to hear the report card out at Rainbow on Lamar. And the minister came, all elected officials came, people who were against me came, and we came and we gave this report. This is what I said I would do, and this is what I've done. This is what I said, this is what I've done. Now, if you have issues or questions about any of this, please ask it now in front of these 700 people because you hold me accountable, okay?
Sure.
Well, the next year, next spring, came time to run for sheriff again.
And I guess we're kind of moving up maybe to the mid-70s.
Never had it, first time ever that there was no opposition.
The Schlitz Festival would happen downtown.
Has done what he said he would do.
How in the
People
world
came
did
together.
you remember that?
I love those
We were
things.
not
It was a
Republicans. We were not
great
Democrats.
deal.
We
Yeah,
were a law enforcement officer that's there to enforce the laws for all
The
people.
whole idea.
And so then I did the third time and that type of thing. So it was, to me, it was an easy script to follow.
Right.
And
So
it just followed where your heart tells you, your mind tells you, is it right? Is it fair?
Yes.
Is it
Something
legal?
you could appreciate
Yes,
more than
exactly.
that. It really did.
That's-
And I look back to those things.
That bears repeating many times every day. I say that is about as simple as it gets, right?
Yes,
It is
indeed.
for me.
Yeah. Well, that's a wonderful thing. What
said,
can you look back on your life and think about like an event or a person that really changed your life, or have you had many of those things?
I'm the luckiest person you have ever met. From day one, the people I worked for at the Etowah County Town. I had a school teacher. Let me tell you about my first school teacher. My family was so poor we got nothing, you know. But we did have a biscuit to bake a piece of meat and take it and put it in a sack and maybe some peanut butter to lunch. First day. I'm 7 years old, whatever. So I go and I'm in the classroom with people different ages.
So
little small
and I just
country
it seems
school.
like
Many
that,
grades.
No, many grades.
And
it
always
and when you go
comes
into the
from
classroom,
the private
everybody brought their little
sector,
sack
really,
and sat
or
around
just people
the
of
room,
goodwill.
And
individuals.
I'm nervous as I can be because I had a terrible inferiority complex all during that period of time. But first day,
support, but
teacher comes lunchtime. So everybody gets their bags to go outside. I don't have a bag. I knew I brought that bag. And I said to my teacher, somebody done stole my lunch. And with that, she knocked me flat across the room. She knocked the daylights out of me.
Yes.
and where
whoa.
they had a rather
I
expansive balcony.
said, what is the deal here? To myself,
says, "Come here, Minnie,
somebody had my
I wanna
lunch.
show you
So
something."
anyway,
She walks me
she
out
put me in the corner
late at
where everybody
night
else went
on the
outside and
back
ate
balcony.
in the classroom by
Can
myself.
you see what I'm
So
talking
she came
about?
back
I
from
said, "God,
lunch
I can't see a
early.
damn thing." That's exactly
brought
what
me
I
this real
mean.
nice
We
lunch.
need to light that bridge.
She said, and
What
explained
an
to me
I
why
was so
couldn't
clever. I knew
say
immediately.
somebody
I mean,
stole
you
my
know,
lunch
I
when
was
maybe a
convinced in
dog
one
came in and
sentence.
got it, or maybe somebody
well,
made a
what
mistake.
great
You know,
idea.
and it was
you
a
know,
good, it was a good
it
lesson.
has
But
to come from individuals who have
she handed me this
vision and
bag
people
of
who have a
food. And I
love
said,
for the
I don't want it.
So,
Now let me tell you where that goes, where
kind
that's
of,
going. Then, in the rest of my life, I never
as you
wanted
saw the
anybody to
suburbs
do
growing,
anything
and as you saw
like
people,
that, a handout
you know,
for me
I
that I
guess,
didn't deserve and had coming.
businesses
but anyhow,
moving
I didn't eat that
further
much. Wow.
east and
But
people
about
living
15
further
years
east.
later,
And, you know,
not
it was
even
almost
that
like
far,
the center of
I
downtown
was in
got to
junior
be
college,
about at Poplar
and she was
Plaza
still
or
around.
somewhere.
And she's one of those
or the center
ladies
of town.
that you just imagine she's driving around, had on a
Yeah.
car
Well, as I
on
saw the
campus.
suburbs
And
developed,
none of us,
watched.
my
Yeah.
class,
That's where I
none of us had
realized,
cars. Maybe one or
wait a
two,
minute,
something. But anyway,
start developing
somebody
with people.
got into trouble in a car wreck.
Downtown,
And
we
I'm
were-
sitting out in
we were
front of
more or
where we
less
had
starting
lunch, or
over.
dinner rather.
Right. It was
And she
real
came in and told me,
clear
she wouldn't
me
let her
who
brother,
went
her,
to
nobody
MUS
could drive her car. She told me, she said,
91 Park.
Noel,
And
we don't know
so,
much.
you know,
She said,
since
why
we're
don't
in
you take my
Germantown
car and go down there and see what's going on? I said, really? The highest point of honor you could possibly have is her to take our old car and crank it. I don't know if she even knew I could drive a car, but I was in college. I'm sure she did. I always remember her name was Miss Rita Brown. And Miss Rita Brown was from Hughes, Arkansas, and came there to teach. And she was probably the one that impressed me most in terms of, but we get outside. Okay, I want to take a little time on this, but early that morning, so we go outside and she lines us all up, first grade. There's a big pole flag for American flag, just been cut, flag on top. And so we did the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Wonderful new school system.
And then she says,
they have to pay for.
we're going to sing. And we're going to sing, Jesus loves me, yes I know, for the Bible tells me so.
Start with houses.
Okay? I didn't go to church. My family didn't go to
So,
church.
so
really?
what,
So I was
what
introduced
came, okay, so
to
you developed the shrine building.
Lord.
Was it hard to sell
I knew about it a little bit from
in the
just
shrine
No,
building?
hearsay, but
dad
my family was not
living
church oriented. We
in
out in the country, you know. That time,
he helped us
church was not a
lease.
part of our
And I
orientation.
just remember
Then she said,
prospective residents running over
I want you to take this little book. It's the book of John, little red book, nothing but just one.
We were right in
one
saying that the
And she
water
said,
people
I want you
living downtown
to memorize
was
this
lack
before the
of
year's
supply,
over.
not
Read
the
it
lack of
and
demand.
memorize as much. So
Now,
if you want to compete in
it-
memorizing, that would be good for the classes. So every other day I'd go in and I'd recite from memory verses of the Bible. Well, at the end of all of that, she says that the nation was founded on the basis of our Creator, God. That was a part of that was liberty and justice for all. There are no exceptions. It doesn't spell out.
The others of us are
And she said, godliness is important, but so is cleanliness.
So,
And most of us didn't have indoor plumbing. And our clothes, you know, but that means it's made it difficult to bathe every day.
Sure, yeah.
And so she said, I had never had a toothbrush.
And so,
But
So she
did
gave me
I
a little
make that
small
clear?
toothbrush.
yeah, it's
And a
brilliant.
little
I had
toothbrush.
not thought
Well,
of that.
I
before.
promise.
Toothpaste. Just about 4 squirts in that little bit too.
Yeah.
But that was the most impressive thing that I can remember, and it started me on my trail of life, looking at what is positive. Positive being clean. Positive is in the pledge of the flag.
Yeah, sure.
Positive is learning about Jesus Christ and what that's all stood, if you chose to. Nobody ever said there were any options, you know. So I took the Bible at full value.
Sure.
And so
people would do.
then
They would
I
say,
learned
"I love
competing
this
in
place.
class,
I love this
learning to
house."
spell,
What
learning to
would
read,
anybody
doing all
else?
those kind of
If
things.
for some
So
reason I had to
I learned
move,
that education
sell,
had to be
would there
so vital.
anybody else
And I
like
saw the
me?
difference
So
between
you
people
have
who
to
had an
sort of
education and who
get
didn't.
to a
Yeah.
mainstream
Yeah.
point
See, most people in that
before you
county then
growth really
barely
accelerates.
finished high school if they did
Well,
at all.
I
My
remember,
parents
I remember back in the
never went to
kind
high
of the
school a day.
maybe Right. 74,
And,
75.
neither
we
did
used to
their
hang out
families,
downtown
as far
a
as I
lot.
can
And
remember.
my
But
friend Gene
same
Siegel,
time, they were not alone in that. People were busy. They were
Shelley
working and
Chapel
trying to
had that building
Yeah,
at
you
41
kinda
Union.
living
Hard
pressed.
on 28
And
yeah,
they
10
used to have
acres or
parties
whatever.
there.
They were
Oh.
part
And,
of the Charlie Burgess
And the
development.
WPA.
Oh, okay, so
That's
that
right.
was
That's the
it.
one I'm talking about.
Okay.
Before
To work on
apartments.
Okay.
Tom
Yeah,
Bigby
Charlie
Rivers,
was the,
taking a
you know, the
team of mules,
godfather
pulling,
behind.
snagging
Wow.
things out of the river.
you
And of
know,
course,
and
Charlie
doing
was
it for
running
75 cents a
the
day.
single
And then he would
business. It was
try to get enough
overnight.
pennies ahead to go
Peabody
buy a
was
sack of
closed
flour
at
and
one time.
and
Once you asked me where
what have you, and
about
so he'd
living
bring
with
home
Lowenstein
some food.
Tower.
Yeah.
And he would
I
go to
once
the
had a
store, and he
friend
would
in
walk from that store to where we
Washington.
lived, about
We
3 miles
walked
away.
from Maine and
Well,
Adams.
can you
We were
imagine
under the
anybody doing that today?
WBCSO.
I cannot.
Really?
Not
I
even
think
a
about
homeless
this.
dude.
Oh, man.
I have
Wow.
a friend,
Now
who
that's
delivers
So
Meals
it
on
was.
Wheels.
Yeah.
You know, you tend to forget. that,
and I go
was,
with him
uh,
sometime.
you know, it
And we go
was
back to the
once
North Memphis
wonderful,
neighborhood where I came to
Yeah.
when I
and
came to Memphis,
headed
where my
back
mom and dad lived. But where I worked at that, we own a 42 going to
Got a
college.
long way to go.
Yeah.
Jackson and Breedlove.
Okay.
North Memphis,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, we make that
That's
route.
why I try to stay
And
young.
while I was working, we owned 42, trying to
Oh,
earn enough
yeah,
money to go
yeah.
to college and law
There
school
seems
at
to
night.
be.
I delivered
so,
groceries
what
when
effect
somebody
did,
had to have a check cashed.
Did the
The boss
Peabody
asked me to take the groceries.
reopening
Oh, it was
have
spectacular.
you
It
cash the
opened
check.
the
He
same
trusted me
month
with the money.
as the Shrine Building.
Did
Now,
it
the
really?
You won't
Shrine
believe this, but
Building
I
was
go to some of the same
insignificant.
houses
Peabody,
today,
you realize,
and
was
you
the
almost come back
community's
to,
living
with delivering Meals on Wheels.
everybody
And one of the
had a little
houses
stake
directly
in the
across the street
Right.
from where I sat on the front steps one night and asked my wife to marry me.
Right.
She was
They
a
went to
senior in
their
high
first
school at Hughes with
bar
Elvis
mitzvah
and so
there.
forth.
They did
And this was
something
2 days
that,
after he graduated from high school.
You know, was
Man, I just think I'm going to let that little gal get away.
Right. You can't fake
I didn't
that.
have
You
I
can't
didn't have
like
a chance
build
for a
that.
quarter.
Don't
And
think
so
I
I said,
Yeah. Oh, I bet.
we got to get this deal on. She said,
And then
okay.
how about Beale Street? I mean,
Yeah,
Beale
Philip,
Street's
that
the
is so
biggest attraction
great. That's so
in Tennessee.
great.
One of the biggest attractions in the country.
Can we move on
What
to
do you-
Anywhere.
What
becoming
What were you hearing about
the
Beale
county
Street back
mayor?
then? Back when it was just
how did that come
closed up
about?
buildings.
And because you were the first
And-
county mayor.
First full
How-
time. Roy
what
Nixon was
was
the first
your
one
thought
elected.
on
Right.
what
And when
could
it changed
happen?
form of government, he had followed me as
it
sheriff,
was
Right.
and
done
then
by
he
project.
left to
I've got
become
rather
run
singular
for part.
project. I've
That
done
part
other
of the
things.
time was
I've
about
done
18 months or
retail,
whatever.
done a
Right.
decent
And then,
amount of office. But
What was happening then
I would
was
never
same thing
have
was
tried
happening
something
when I
as
ran for
hard as
sheriff.
Beale Street.
My perception
And you
of
remember, it
what that
started
job
kind
should
of
be and the
rocky
image that
start.
job should be
there was a
was different from what I
time
was
when,
seeing my old friend do.
Sure.
They was all caught up in some of his people getting him in trouble.
was sort of
And
holding
I
the
said, I
state
told this story at
together.
his funeral
And
a
Preston
few weeks ago.
Don
I spoke at his
McPreston
funeral,
Lamb,
and I
Brian
talked about
Don
he was a
McNeil,
good law enforcement officer.
guitar player.
He came from
He
Memphis
well
Police
kept it
Department, went to
going.
juvenile
Yeah.
court, then he worked
Yeah.
with
They
me
really
as my
did.
chief deputy for 6 years.
Then
He was the law enforcement mindset of me as an administrator.
Right.
And so that was a good combination. But
Right.
uh,
you know,
I
Street's
disagreed
sort of
with the
been
good
going
old
on
boy
ever since.
Yeah, I
relationships
think there
of
was,
taking care of people
in
just
the
because they
beginning,
were
because we used to
doing the
eat
same thing
lunch.
you
I was
did.
working down at,
You know,
at
I
Motion
mean,
Picture
if
Lab
you
down
mess
on,
up, you mess
South
up,
Main
and you pay
Street.
up.
And we'd come up on Beale
You
Street
don't get a free
and
ride.
eat
Yeah,
lunch, but
okay, yeah.
there
And
was
then
a
if you start getting a
surprising
free
lack
ride,
of
the community
authenticity
sees that.
other
they say, what
than
heck,
the Rum
you know.
Boogie.
But
There
anyway,
was the Kubla Khan Chinese restaurant, and you're
I
kind
was
of thinking,
doing
okay, what's
business
a
in
Chinese
business world.
restaurant?
I was having
It was
a good
almost
time
like
making
the
good money and
corporation
doing all that.
came in.
This job
think
didn't pay.
about it,
Mayor didn't pay me
Chinese
$35,000 a year.
Really?
And I was in the real estate business, in the consulting business since
Well,
1971.
that
This
is
was
true.
78. So I've been out of office. My name recognition,
Right.
That
even to,
elaborates on Chinese
my name is going away.
influence in Memphis.
Did you really? Really, you think so?
Yeah, well, you know, you had to come back and get a recall, knock him on the head. That was the guy that did this, that,
just
and the
kind
other.
of the whole
But anyway, the
tenor of the place was a
the
little
irritation
off,
of what I thought
except for
like
county
you,
government
I
should be.
argued for
Open
let's
and
make it,
progressive in terms of extending the boundaries of Memphis to Tennessee and the rest of the world, and to create an economic opportunity for more and more people. And I don't know where that came from, but I had a sense of what we needed to do. And certainly you needed a government that was operated in the light of day. And that was the theme of my campaign, where we did business in the light of day. Dr. John Bakke, wonderful man, he gave birth to that thought. And Don Sundquist, who became congressman, John Elkinson, and Jim Rout, and you know, all these people who were leaders of the Republican Party and what
you
have
need somebody
they
younger on your
became
show.
a centerpiece
no.
for the strategy and the philosophy that we wanted to put on the table.
So after
and I became the
the
spokesman
Shrine
for that,
building,
and it was
what
well
was your
received.
next big
And of course, I
project?
was
Was
elected.
it South Bluff?
But it was a need. There was a need to change the direction. So Skip did a really good. Nixon, Roy Nixon, he did a good job of taking over and trying to create a strong form of government. But most people say things like, "Well, I would vote for you, but I don't live in the county." I said, "Where do you live?" They said, "Memphis." Let me tell you, but 200 years, or however, it's 170. Memphis has been in Shelby County, and I spent a lot of time explaining that to the Director of Fire Police, Frank Holloman. You know, as a sheriff, for example, I don't have a deputy that does not rank you high as ranking policeman, because we're a constitutional government. And even today, people who run for office, I started talking about it a little earlier about being knowing what they're supposed to do when they get elected, and they run on campaign promises. The job doesn't require them to even participate in this. Oh, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop school buses. I'm going to stop. You know, I'm going to do all these things like they were going to make it happen. They don't understand it takes so many votes in county commission, and you know, that kind of. But so I ran and had the most wonderful 16 years. I was able to
unprecedented growth, I say too. Just
really,
the county just took off.
Well, the reason why is that I must tell you, when Martin Luther King was killed in 1968, the city just absolutely went blank. I mean, Chamber of Commerce moved out of town, and you know, windows were boarded up, and it seemed to me that we had a very long mourner's bench. People sitting around wringing their elbows. The town's going to hell. We're going to float us right down the river. And then Lamar Alexander was elected at the same time. I was elected, and we got together, and he came up with, and we came up with a joint mindset that was to have a jobs conference, and people like Rod Terry and the other business leaders in town came right into the middle. That's when we decided, you know, one monkey doesn't make a show. One mayor, one county commission, one government. It takes a community coming together, business leadership, and having an agenda. So we determined we could do lots of great things if we worked together. We had so many assets, so we identified those assets. And the Mississippi River, Bill Street, and those opportunities. We had a great workforce, and we had a wonderful thing going on. It's called Federal Express and an airport, and all the transportation infrastructures. And so America's Distribution Center came into being, and so we became a big warehousing and distribution area and the United States. So that spawned a lot of growth. And then Elvis Presley died in 1977. And you know, I went in office in 1978. Bill Street was struggling. John Elkin, those people, they were trying to get things going. And we decided we could have a really terrific attraction, tourism destination coming to Memphis, because we've got Bill Street and we've got the blues. And now we add to that the dimension of Elvis Presley, who loved this city. He could have gone to Los Angeles and lived high, but he loved Memphis. You know, and he didn't let the detractors from society of Memphis alter his love for what he was doing. His guys were here, you know. His friends were here. His fumes buddies were here. And then as he died, of course, he has accomplished so much. By the way, he's been dead longer than he lived. This year, in the year 2019, and when we have an event coming up here next month, 30,000 people will sit in one room, 3,000 rather, sit in one room to hear stories, just like we talk about here now. People who were not even were born 42 years ago, traveling from around the world to come and sit in that theater at Graceland to hear stories of people who do Elvis. So I have a segment in my book, just not a big portion, but about 20 pages, talking about who I thought he was as an individual, his contribution, which was far beyond just the music. As great as he was, he's a great performer. That's why I named the Trauma Center after him, the Elvis Presley Trauma Center, because he was such a compassionate, caring individual. I want people to know that. He was also a religious person, and he studied not only the Bible today, but ancient religions.
Scope.
And he was
It is.
really a
I mean,
fascinator.
I don't mean to be
Hal Wallace,
immodest,
who produced most of his movies,
the federal government
sat
now
at
has
the
a
same
program
table
they
where I
call
sat,
BID
and he
until
said
this recent
then,
Congress, who knows
you know, I've
that.
never had
But,
an actor
has a
that
program
was
now
as
called
quick a
Choice
learner as
Neighborhood.
Elvis Presley is.
Really?
So, you know, you think about this kid from North Mississippi, going to Hume High
Writ
School,
large across
being
the
acclaimed
country.
as a
But as
quick
far as I
learner.
know, Memphis can be
It's quick to
proud
learn what he wanted to learn.
Sure, yeah.
of the
That's
uptown big
incredible.
show, which
And you know,
is
most people
validated,
don't look beyond the
All of us
entertainer
want
when they talk about Elvis, but
and we'll
you
fight
know, for somebody who had so much passion for Memphis
think
and
that
who
just showing
always
people
looked for the good
that,
things
okay,
to
this
put
is
his
available
money
now. You
and his
can
time.
be proud of your
It
neighborhood,
truly
you know.
is
Then people
amazing.
follow
And
right along,
it still
and
amazes
it's a
me that
self-fulfilling prophecy,
42
right?
years,
I
almost
certainly
42 years
learned
after his death,
I
that people
learned
still
that
come. And we go to
particularly in
Graceland
Arlington
right
there,
this second and go down there, and there would be buses going in and out of there from people all over the world.
A whole new generation.
I know.
Isn't that amazing?
It really is. It really is. I'm so glad Elvis, and I'm so glad the Presleys came to Memphis
Oh, so
in
am I.
48.
So am I. And I bet the presses were too.
Yeah, you know it because they were hard pressed too. Let's talk a little bit about your book and how that came about, and then we'll wrap it up.
And I could come back anytime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Sure.
I'd love to. You know.
Okay.
Anyway,
And
I've
that
just
leads
finished,
me to ask.
we
after
did
2.5
that
years of working on it, a book called
with
Bill
the
Morris,
Bills
da, da, da,
family.
da. But the reason the book was written, my wife had a stroke in
very
1997.
much occupied.
And so I stopped politics, quit doing anything outside. I dedicated 24 hours a day for 19 years to the gal that was the mother of my children and my sweetheart for life. And
Sure.
it was the most gratifying, rewarding time that any human being could have if they can take their love and affection and convert it into a quality of life of somebody who didn't have
What
much.
has been?
But anyhow, during that period of time,
What's been the key?
we had grandchildren.
to successfully
And we had
working
great-grandchildren.
with these administrations.
And
and
out
I
of
don't
city
want
so
you to
forth,
say
we
who
were
was
sort
good
of
or who was
isolated.
bad, but just what
And
are the
then
things
We've
that,
had pretty good
I participated in many
relationships
things in Memphis,
Really,
even
with
during that
everybody.
period of time, University of
We're going
Memphis,
to see Mayor
athletic
Strickland
department, and all that goes with that. But you know, what I found that
Okay.
after a
I'm real
while,
pleased to do
Willie
it.
Harrington was the mayor of the city of Memphis.
Yeah.
But I had
And one day, and I'm in the mayor's office, whenever 1981, whenever he was elected, he came in one day and had a newspaper in his hand,
so much on his calendar.
and he said, "This is you."
We just want to talk about
I said, "Yeah, that's me."
what
I didn't know you were sheriff. I'm talking about the mayor of the city of Memphis in 1981. Did not know I was that guy. He made me somebody else. And I thought, that's a strange deal.
Yeah.
And then I talked to my friend Jim Gillis.
Because I mean, to do a project like
we've been friends a long time.
Uptown, I mean,
Many
I
of them
can't
people
imagine
didn't remember
what you had to go
the
through
days
with the city.
that I was the sheriff.
Infrastructure.
City
I
and
was
county.
that
City
guy.
and county.
Yeah.
And so then
which is
many people
of
didn't have
course,
any
more
clue
than doubly
in Memphis about
difficult
James Earl Ray and Martin Luther King and why the assassination and how it was handled and all the nuances of gaining information to make sure that James Earl Ray was there when time came for the judge to make a decision on the future of his life. And so I said, we need to tell that story. We need to tell the story of the civil rights. And we need to tell the story of why it's important to let people that you know
just real hard.
will do what you think they'll do. Education. You need to tell them the story about transitioning from the private sector to the public sector and why you make those commitments to take less to do more.
Right.
You'll go out and make money, but you need to take less to be in public service. Community service and public service, to me, is my chosen lifestyle. And so I want to say that. And then the opportunities I had to go around to working on a committee in the White House with Ronald Reagan. That's a long ways from Fulton, Mississippi.
I was thinking about the
when I'm sitting there in a photograph with him, and he invited me to be a part of the Economic Development Council for the nation.
One of the oldest laws in Memphis, where the founders came in and said, we're going to have this area along here for the public,
4 children,
and it's always
9 grandchildren,
going to
11
be
great-grandchildren, a great church
well,
life. And
not a lot.
It wasn't about
there
money.
seems to have always been a lot of
And
controversy
so I had in there
kind of around
about
that, and
my
there
life
hasn't
has been
been
a rich
whole
life
lot that's
without
been
riches.
done. Do you have you
That is
thought
well
about
put.
this a lot?
One more question.
All right.
And
Sure.
How do you want to be remembered?
It has failed miserably.
Just that.
I mean, it has
I prefer to think
prohibited development.
that I would like to be known as a person who gave
Therefore, the attraction
instead of
the
taking.
public
Yeah.
from
But who
Front Street
received
to the water.
without asking,
And
who lived a good life
really
without the
is a
riches.
very unfortunate
and hopefully
thing because
no
the
one
water
would
is
say
so
I
attractive,
ever offended them
yet
on a personal
Yet-
basis.
there's nothing to attract
That's strong,
you there.
and I think you've done that. I think you have accomplished that.
I'm sure there are people. That's obviously in politics, you're going to walk on the wrong side of the street from a lot of people.
Yeah.
But if you stand for anything,
The fire station
you
isn't
achieve
an
nothing.
attraction,
You know,
nor is the
Yeah.
parking.
That is
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank our audience for hanging in here with us. This is a fascinating conversation. I hope to continue this conversation at some point and maybe do another segment here. So we hope you'll join us then. I want to thank Bill Morris for being the person he is and the person he became from that tough start in Itawamba County, but he rose to the heights of politics and really of integrity. I mean, your integrity speaks for itself. So thank you so much for being here. It is a pleasure.
My pleasure.
So,
Thank you.
by making it a public place, they have made it not a public place. In fact, a place for nobody. So it's really quite a shame that that endures.
Huh. Yeah, I hope that something can be made of that, because every time I go downtown a lot, I see people from all over the world who are fascinated by us. You know?
Think of our culture. It is a really, really unique culture.
It really is.
I mean, I don't mean to disparage anyone else, but when you go, let's just say generically, to the Middle West, you see a nice, prosperous, boring place.
Yeah.
Is Memphis boring? I don't think so.
Not at all. Not at all.
I mean, we got sex, violence, and rock and roll.
You're right about that. And people are here to see that every day.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's in the dead of winter or when it is. There are people coming to Memphis to find out what we're about. And I love to see people, that corridor, and there is a corridor now from down Union to Sun Studios. You know, I see people walking there every day.
I want to get them to go down Monroe.
Yes,
a little
right.
bit more pleasing. I feel
That
a little
is-
bad about them being, particularly in July.
Sure,
going
yeah,
down.
that's a
down
tough
Union.
walk. What are your thoughts on? Because I hear people talk about gentrification of neighborhoods and things. I don't know if I see it as, well, I guess it is gentrification, but there's so many great neighborhoods in Memphis that could be redone and resettled by people. You know, I look at, across Crump Boulevard now, down into South Memphis, off the state streets down there. Mm-hmm. And, there's some beautiful, beautiful homes down there, down around the Stax Museum in that area. Some beautiful, beautiful homes down there. Pushing poor people out of somewhere has been the way people have done it before. But Uptown seems to be...
Well, it was built with lower income people in mind.
Right.
But the secret is to raise people's incomes.
Yes.
Give people opportunity
right.
that maybe was denied in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that gentrification, meaning ownership or citizenry by people with means,
right.
is a good thing.
Uh-huh.
You just have to make sure means are distributed with some degree of equity.
Okay.
And if you can't get to equity immediately,
mm-hmm.
if you show a clear, deliberate path in that direction,
right.
people think about something more constructive than say, "Oh, I don't want to gentrify." Indeed, you do. What
yes.
do you want to do? Pauperize, make a neighborhood poor?
Uh-huh.
You don't.
No.
You want the people there to have opportunity and live a nice life.
Yeah. And I think it takes schools and it takes, avenues into the middle class and all of that.
Nobody can not put schools first.
Right.
You just can't. I mean, who's going to take care of you when you're old if you ain't got a smart kid?
Right.
So you got to send them to a good school, and
yeah.
I think we're making some heroic efforts to do that. But we will probably have to make some even more extraordinary efforts. I have an idea that we call communities of scholars, where you find a school that is doing particularly well. In other words, a school that would be attractive to a population
mm-hmm.
of people. And you put your community reinvestment dollars in circles surrounding that school.
Right.
And you gentrify, if you will,
mm-hmm.
or you make a neighborhood successful.
Yeah.
But
it all has to work
around
together.
the school.
Yeah, it all.
I learned that. I mentioned earlier that I learned building your population mm-hmm. from watching Germantown.
Right.
I learned make your school great by watching suburban school mm-hmm. systems.
Right.
And
wow.
we must have an equally good system in the city, or series of systems.
Right. So, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you do to change Memphis or help Memphis?
Well, lacking a wand, and I don't think I'd want a wand
uh-huh.
because
too many
people
would disappear.
No, you've got to earn it.
Yeah.
It's the process. You
sure.
never have a perfect place.
Right.
You're only engaged in a productive and positive agenda,
mm-hmm.
or you're not.
Right.
And so I wouldn't want a wand.
Mm-hmm.
I would want to keep, in my case, just as plodding along with development and redevelopment. I will say redevelopment.
Sure.
It probably better describes what we do.
Right.
And we're now thinking more in terms of inclusivity and equity.
Right.
Because Memphis, if you look at Memphis and you talk in terms of the we are black and have a relatively lower income. We're more black and more lower income than most cities.
Right.
So we have to think about, when we're thinking about ourselves, we've got to identify ourselves.
Sure.
I happen to be the exception, you know, old rich white boy.
Yeah.
But that's not typical.
Right, right. So things like the crosstown development and all that.
What a splendid place. I went in for the first time
Really?
since it's been more or less finished
Uh-huh.
last week.
Yeah.
What a big time I had. I went to a little party. I couldn't go to the party for looking at the building.
Uh-huh.
It was just wonderful.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to understand it. And I think it may relate to the topic we just discussed.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to realize Crosstown was not a development, it was a challenge to be bigger and better than we are. Think about that.
Ah.
And if that isn't what they mean, I'm going to attribute it to them anyway.
Right. That's well. That's well put. That definitely is well put. So with all the projects you've done, with everything, you know, you kind of look back, and you're going to be remembered for a lot. You know, for being able to kind of come in and have good ideas and implement those ideas. A lot of people have good ideas, and a lot of people can talk a good game, but not many people can, you know, say, okay, we're going to do this, and then it gets done, and then after a couple of things, people know, well, Henry's going to do this. You know, if Henry puts his mind to it, he's going to do it. What do you want to be remembered for?
The next deal.
Okay, the next, I like that.
Darn
I
right.
like that. Sure, of course.
And I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah.
But,
Well, and I think that having the enthusiasm and having the curiosity, you know, to, you know, continue to look at things and see what they could be, and to know that
that's all a developer does.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Just know what could be.
Yeah.
And be
got
able
a good
to
imagination and a good phone full of numbers of people that can actually do work.
There you go. There you go. I love
Not
it.
just think about it and talk about it, but can actually do it.
I love
and
it.
I'm blessed with
Yeah.
good telephone full of numbers.
Well, and I will say this. You know, you're the largest section in Elmwood Cemetery is called the Turley section, and you have a lot of relatives in there and people who have done a lot for this part of the world. And I'm just glad that you've been able to do this in your way and with your own with your own rules.
Well, you're
and
very
all that.
kind.
Well, but
To begin and to
you've been so
conclude.
good to the city. You could have lived anywhere. You probably could have retired a long time ago, but you know you haven't, and you've been here, and you continue to think about these things. And I hope that when you're talking to Mayor Strickland tomorrow, I guarantee
I won't be talking. I'll be listening.
Oh, you'll be
Will I?
listening?
All
Okay.
right.
Well, why don't you?
That's why they call him mayor.
Well, you could. You can. I'm sure you can. Give him a few pointers and things like that.
Well,
you
I
know.
hope we, you know, as I say, development and developing a city is a collaboration and a joint venture, and we ought to look at it that way.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you've done all this, and it's always fun to see you out and talk to you. And
Well, fun to be with you.
we've known one another for a long time,
That's
and
right.
and I appreciate everything you do, and thank you
And,
so
and
much.
you
Well-
just do more and do more diverse things.
Well, thank you. You know what? I look at it as a blessing.
We're lucky, aren't we?
I am so lucky to be able to do what I do here in Memphis, Tennessee, because I love Memphis and I love doing all this. So
I hear
really
you.
is. It's a nice thing, and I'm glad we have a library. That, you know, most cities don't have a library that has a television station, and I always think, where else could somebody like me sit here and talk to interesting people for an uninterrupted hour. We haven't taken a commercial.
I did not know, Willie, this show lasted an hour.
Yeah.
But thanks for letting me shoot my mouth off for such a long time.
I tell you, it has been my pleasure having you here, and I really appreciate it. And I hope all of you have enjoyed being here on Dialogue, and I hope you'll see us again next month. We'll have some other interesting people to talk to. And once again, I want to thank Henry Turley for being my guest today. Thank you. Thank you, Henry.
Thank you, Willie.